if you can get in and start to fix processes, you get these big wins. And so one of the things that I did is I just love to get in the weeds, start at the bottom, and find out what everyone's, biggest problems are. Go out to an office and figure out what a sales rep's biggest problem is. Figure out what your customer support or your customer experience's biggest problems are. And then I would spend a lot of time in the trenches at the weeds with those people, and then start chipping away at their biggest problems. Getting small wins to fix big processes was super key for me.
This episode of the Reps Journey podcast features Lacy Anderson, the Senior Vice President of Sales Operations at Ion Solar. The Reps Journey podcast exists to help you recruit, train, and retain your reps.
All right, I am here with Lacy Anderson. Lacy is now the Senior SVP of Sales Operations for Ion. And I wanted to have Lacy on because her just incredible background in sales ops, right? So she's been a director, she's been, a manager, then a director, then a VP of sales, then now senior VP of sales operations for 2 different companies, right? So Ion Solar, Lumio, Aptiv, 10 years at Vivint, experience with chief revenue officer. So she has just a huge background. And I'm always harping on the need for companies to think about the whole rep journey, like the whole experience. Not just, the individual pieces. And who better to talk to than someone that knows how to scale all of the facets of recruiting, onboarding, training, and retaining reps as a whole single motion, than someone with your level of experience. So let's
Thanks
start
for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. So let's start with this. Why sales ops? Why have you devoted a large portion of your adulthood to doing this?
Great question. It's been a very strategic decision in my career. Obviously, there were times when people were like, get into procurement or get into, operations, but I have really loved sales operations. This role is so key to any sales organization. It's really the bridge between sales and that operations side. And sales really needs a good sales operations department in order to function properly. And so I loved it because I got to be involved in so many aspects of the business because of that unique role. You were working so close with finance, you were working so close with operations, with warehouse and field. And so for me, it was fun because I got to interact with the whole company and kind of be this glue that kept the sales force going. And it was exciting for me.
The glue. I love the idea of, the concept of glue. Would you agree that it really touches every aspect of what every department that a rep has to touch to be successful, you have to integrate with or talk to? I saw
100%.
I saw in your profile, just talking with the housing department, talking with the asset department, working with recruit, every single group you have to work with. And
I think
keep going.
Some of that, just a note on that is I'm talking to developers about our apps, all the way to project managers, IT. I cover it all, and so it's really fun to interact with all of the various people that come with the company, and I get to learn so much. I absorb so much knowledge because of all the paths I cross.
And our audience knows this, right? But it's especially strong. It's not, this is just one way, we sell. It's sales operations for a direct to home company is the lifeblood of the company, right? So it's especially important that they get it right. Okay, so in your profile, you had a lot of experience with working directly with the chief revenue officer, and I thought that was really unique. This is way back, and I think sounds like a huge advantage to have, being able to speak that language and to understand what they care about. Could you tell me more about your experience working with the CRO?
Yeah, at both Vivint and Aptiv, I had the awesome opportunity to work super close and right alongside the chief revenue officer and chief, the CEO. And so it was a really fun time to sit in their executive meetings and hear, what the business was needing to do. And I learned a lot. You obviously understand what are their driving factors? What are they trying to push? What initiatives do they need to move to get the revenue that they need? And so for me, that was an awesome growth opportunity. It really fast-tracked my career to helping me understand, what the business needs in order to function and how I can best help it get to where it needs to go. And it kind of always came back to, the sales org is the blood of any business. And so we have to make sure we are giving them an awesome experience. We are taking care of them, but also still servicing the rest of your business, right? Your field ops, your operations, your warehouse people. So it was a good insight as to, what C-levels need to have their business function right.
How would you say that having that experience with a CRO has helped you not sell, but position projects, anchor the value that leadership wants to create in a project? How did that help you think? Maybe it's I don't know, because I've been, I did it so long and I just remember, but I gotta imagine that someone that doesn't have that contact doesn't quite always understand what's in the mind of leadership around whatever, initiative is that, say, a region wants or a division of the company wants, and they can think about it a little bit differently.
For me, I was always kind of in the weeds and in the trenches, but then it was kind of nice to come up and see the big picture, right? The 40,000 level view of what's happening. And then kind of returning back and getting in the weeds and figuring out, okay, here's the stuff they're encountering. But understanding that high level vision and bigger picture was always super helpful to, understand the needs of the business. And obviously, from a chief revenue perspective, he's got one goal on his mind: bring revenue.
Yeah.
And retain his sales reps and build and grow. And so it was really fun to see, how he had to be strategic in decisions and finance, even financial decisions based off of that. And so it was fun to watch them, figure out how to grow their business.
Yeah. So your trajectory, right? Your different, it was really cool because you had a good tenure at each role, like your time with your CRO and then a manager and then a director all the way up. What advice would you give people that were, say, at the sales ops manager role right now? They're in the manager, space, and they want to level up. What could you tell them that what clicked in your mind maybe when you're going from maybe a manager to being a VP, and the things the ways you changed the way you thought or you think to get there? For
sure. So I love fixing broken processes. And I think that's a skill that everybody should, if they're going to run sales ops, should hone in and really get awesome at it. Because if you can get in and start to fix processes, you get these big wins. And so one of the things that I did is I just love to get in the weeds, start at the bottom, and find out what everyone's, biggest problems are. Go out to an office and figure out what a sales rep's biggest problem is. Figure out what your customer support or your customer experience's biggest problems are. And then I would spend a lot of time in the trenches at the weeds with those people, and then start chipping away at their biggest problems. Getting small wins to fix big processes was super key for me. And I think that was the time when I kind of started to level up as a manager of okay, I know how to find a problem and turn it around and fix and get a good solution out to the org to benefit everybody. And so I wasn't just focusing on just sales and just sales ops. I was focusing on, okay, what's finance's biggest problem? What's the biggest hiccup that, the warehouse has with sales, or, I'm so solving for those problems across the company kind of made it super valuable and leveled me up, I think, from that, manager to director role.
You mentioned problems a few times, and it's he who owns the problems and can define them the best knows where to go, right? And so it's like what you said, getting out of the building and going, talking to individual reps and understanding their viewpoint, and then going to talk to the various departments. And if you can define the problems really well and articulate the problems, that's the base. Would you agree that that's kind of like the basis, the starting point,
Yeah.
before you even talk about the ultimate goal? I would think is like, here are the challenges. How do you convey those challenges in a way that isn't gritty, like, or grating? Or how do you present problems in a way, the right timing? Basically, how do you make friends versus making enemies by highlighting problems?
I think, getting in and kind of having that mentality of seeking to understand before you're like, hey, that's terrible. Really just understanding what the current state is and feeling for them and having, empathy of like, oh, okay, I get it. Now let me possibly give you a solution of how, we could better that or improve that. I think obviously people always want improvement. And I think taking that challenge on head on, like, instead of running from all the problems and being like, okay, they're all over there, I'm going to focus over here on some good. I address the problems because I think people appreciate you overcoming those obstacles. So kind of like you said, instead of running from, all the bad, you take it on, own it, and make it better. And I think over time you kind of gain that respect and that kind of clouded, like, okay, she's going to make it better. Like, I trust that. It might be bad right now, but she is going to. And so,
let me ask you an approach on a problem, right? So let's say you have a problem. I'll just throw out one, like, reps aren't getting enough referrals. I don't know. I'll just throw out something like that. If that was the problem, the way you attack that problem would be, I'm going to solve it well at just one level, at the rep level, and then rinse, repeat, at each department? Or would you do a thing of going, I'm going to go find out the problem, for this context, I'm gonna go find out what everybody believes or remarks about this process all the way through the different groups. What's the incentives? What's the rep situation? What is the rep's training on it? Like all that stuff. Would you say that those are the differences between, say, like a sales ops manager and a VP of sales? The one sales ops manager is going to do it at just like one level at a time, and a VP of sales or sales ops is going to go and talk to everyone and do it like a more holistic approach to it?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that, my biggest priority is taking care of all the other departments, and really getting all of their feedback and fixing it once, versus, managers just want to fix it for my team or whoever's going to benefit from that they encounter the most. And I'm, thinking of a way bigger level, kind of like a C-level, let's solve it for everyone and not just one department.
What would you say to somebody that's like sales ops manager right now, who's fighting for that time to not be in a reactive state where they're just taking on requirements and fulfilling them, and getting a little bit of time to get out the building and go research and go do that time? What would you, how would you help them position themselves in a way that to get that time from their direct reports? Because this is a common thing I see, especially with when we're working with customers. It's just that getting enough time to sell what it could be, like what the thing could be, because they're working through all of the current requirements that have been put on them.
I once had a CEO tell me, like, if you're interested in a meeting that's happening, but maybe you're not invited, don't ever hesitate to ask to be invited. Now, of course, there's going to always be those scenarios where there, some confidential and maybe some things discussed, but if you can identify meetings that are happening that you're like, oh, I would love to learn more about the business and grow, ask for a seat at that table. And don't be afraid to ask for a seat at that table, because that's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to develop yourself. That's how you're going to, push the bounds of your current role. And so I took that advice, and it was hard. Don't get me wrong. That first time that you asked to join a meeting that, you weren't automatically invited to, it can be daunting. It can be hard, but I learned that it really did propel my career. Do not be afraid to ask for a seat at the table if you aren't, and of course, you have to have some tact with that, but find those areas where it's like, hey, I would love to learn a little bit more about this department. I'm not in the meeting, but can I come listen, see what's going on? And then you're just going to continue to learn and grow and develop the more you kind of get involved with all the aspects of the business. And so that's kind of the biggest advice I'd give to somebody is, recognize that there's meetings happening, and sometimes it's okay to ask to be a part of them.
Such good advice. Sometimes it's a little bit of like self-confidence, self-worth, like can I be in there? And I would say, as a business owner, man, I would love that. Like, I would love if people wanted to learn about it, and I get to share more of the baby, to them, you know what I mean? And tell them how things work. There's no offense to me at all if they want to spend more time learning about the company. You also talk about getting around the building, not getting out, and talking and learning a little bit about different parts of the business that don't seem immediately connected to a sales rep, but are totally connected. Can you talk a little bit more about that with regards to just the benefit of really getting kind of just, even if it's just a gist of the different departments, like what that can lead to? So
one of my favorite things to do when I start at a new company is to just, and it's hard because you hit the ground running, but I like to spend an hour in a different department every single day and just kind of really sit down with boots on ground people and say, okay, walk me through what you do, walk me through your processes, walk me through what it looks like. And sometimes when CEOs or CROs are like, why are you doing that? Nobody knows better like what's going on in your business than kind of those grunt workers, the people that are answering calls. And so I love to kind of really dig in from the bottom up when I am trying to fix problems. And so start at the bottom, find out all of the stuff. And then when you get to the top, say, okay, big picture, here's what needs to happen to get resolved, or here's what little things we can do to make these experiences better. And then start chipping away at them. That's really fun for me. And so I think that's good advice for anybody of, when you pass somebody in the hall, know what they do, know kind of their processes, and how can you help make them better?
Yeah, and you're creating advocates at the same time, right? Relationships and advocates. So when you do come to them and want movement, there's already a relationship there. What you said about the ability to go from the bottom up, and you start to kind of hear the resonance of what everybody's saying. They say it in different ways, but they're all saying the same thing, but in their context. It's the same problem, but it's all masqueraded around like, this is what the rep wants, this is what the recruiter wanted, and then it's the same thing. And so it's just kind of like getting the first principles of it, right? Of what that thing is. How do you demonstrate contribution in a tangible way? So there's getting the win, there's having a seat at the table. Do you think what's your approach to that? Hey, if I have a win and I complete a system and it works and it gets better, that's all that's needed. People will see my contribution. I will rise through the ranks. Or is there not gamesmanship, but there's some things that you can do to kind of like take something that's an intangible win and kind of make it feel more tangible for people?
Yeah, I think that there's always a way to go about that. I think that anytime I'm fixing a process, anytime that anybody's been involved, when it kind of gets over the finish line, I always love to do like a recap of here's what happened, and give those shout outs to all those that helped you, because it's not a one-man effort. And so really making sure that you're including those people that helped get that process fixed, and highlighting that and telling everybody, because as you build up people below you, you're building yourself up. And so I love to really give credit where credit's due. I might be, the person driving the car, but I'm not I'm not all the wheels and the things that making it go. And so the other thing I really love is sometimes it doesn't have to be tangible. You can silently go behind the scenes and just be grateful for what you did. It'll come back around for you if you just be patient. And then the last thing I kind of want to say about this is just never be afraid to get in the weeds again, even at my level. So I still to this day will hop on phone calls and take phone calls from reps. I will hop in our chats and clear tickets for sales reps. I think that's part of how I do that, is keeping my team knowing that, like, I'm not asking them to do anything that I wouldn't do. Make sure you're willing to get in the weeds. If you're running an event, make sure you're the first one there and the last one leaving as a VP. And so that's kind of been my motto of, like, if I'm going to ask my team and employees to do something, I better be willing to do the exact same thing. So I'm not opposed to taking phone calls at 11 o'clock at night. So I think that really helped.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good culture that you develop with all of your people. You know, if they can see that demonstrated. Culture is what you do, not what you say, right?
Right.
And that's really, really cool. I feel bad for even bringing it up, but like the whole point was like that I just see sometimes. Okay, I'll give you an example. So no one really owns the numbers, let's say, in their funnel, like they're like how many they're recruiting on onboarding and training. It's not been, cast out on from high, like these are the numbers we want to hit and the conversions we want. And so I'm always promoting, like, somebody own that, like somebody just own that. What was it last year? Even if you don't have the right numbers, go find the numbers and say, here are the numbers, here are the numbers that we had last year. And I would like to move the numbers here, to this many people onboarded, or this many people that had their first sale, or the time to first sale reduced by 4 days or 10 days or whatever, something like that. And just say, someone go own that. Like, that's the thing I was talking about with regards to contribution. At what point do you feel like in your career, you kind of started owning those and saying, I'm going to own the outcomes of these numbers, and work with team members to really, like, drive to a specific, KPI or number. Do you think that's ever the role of a sales operations to do that? Or is that a CRO's role to set those numbers?
I think both. I think they go hand in hand. I learned really early on with working with the chief revenue officer that I needed to go make, data decisions, go pull data and give it to him and say, hey, we need, rooms of improvement here, or this is a weird stat. Why do you think this is happening, and counsel with him? But I definitely, loved to own that pre-forecasting, saying, hey, we're going to have a dip here. We probably need to do something. We need to get proactive with an incentive. What are your thoughts about this? And really, I just owned that and picked that up early on in my career. And I think I got that kind of, I started as an EA. I don't know if that's been, kind of clear, but I started an executive assistant, and really understanding, like, what a C-level needed to, execute on some decisions. I learned early on that, I needed data, and I needed to back it with, hey, this isn't just a feeling. This isn't a thought. This isn't something I've noticed, like, here's some data to back it up. And so I really feel like that's a key part of a business is pulling data, looking at data, and then making decisions based off of that data, and having that there to help drive those decisions.
But I can see how they go hand in hand. So the person that's just the crystal baller that just looks at data and never does anything, doesn't want to go talk to the reps, and is always promoting, like, it could be this, if we just, did these, like, they're only crystal balling, but they are not showing that they can be the person that goes and gets their hands dirty. Then they lose a little bit of that respect, right? Like, if they're just that person. So it kind of goes both, I guess, right? They have to go together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So stakeholder puzzle. So I put down here just 2 words, stakeholder puzzle. I've seen often in this industry wildly different stakeholder groups. Okay, so you've got non-corporate, never been corporate, direct to home, direct to sales reps, guys that were direct to home, and gals that were direct to home sales reps that became, massive leaders and partners in the company, that they just care about their group. Like, they just want their group to do really well. And they want the company to do well, but you know what I mean? Like, they're really focused on that. Yeah. They're maniacal about that. And then you've got, like, IT, who's really focused on process, right? Process and the, this is not in that sprint, we gotta do it, in a certain way. And then you've got coordinating with training and onboarding support teams. So yes, you go out in the field, you talk to everybody, but what are some tips that you can give for working with these different types of stakeholders? how can you help brash reps and managers understand the process that IT is going through? And how can you help IT understand more about this world of direct sales that moves a little faster than they might be used to if they were in a corporate environment before?
For sure. I've actually experienced this a lot. You get these developers that they're like, no, we work out of sprints and you don't tell us what, and so I think being kind of having a good project manager with whatever project you're doing, it helps. But I think communication is the biggest thing. So many days people are afraid of group messages and, including more people on a chat that maybe don't need to be, but I always believe in more is okay. More people in that chat scene, that visibility is fine. More communication on what is happening and the why. I think the biggest thing is always explaining the why to people. It's really easy to just be like, okay, I don't get it, but here's the why to the decision that we're coming to is super important. And then I think it just comes down to communication, over communicating and, involving people that maybe they're on the fence of if you should include them, but it never hurts to have some more eyes on it than maybe you thought or the other people think. It's like, why is that person included? And it's like, well, hey, maybe they can pass something down to their teams or to the sales reps that, you might not think about. And so I think those are two kind of tips to stakeholders is over communicate and
more collaborate rather than doing unilateral negotiations with each one and then trying to stitch it together. So that's interesting. So would you start with that high level of group collaboration, or do you go straight into that? Or do you do a little bit of like reconnaissance before you frame it up and then go group on it? Like,
for sure, reconnaissance. So yeah, I will go meet with them, and then and then I start to bring them together, and it's like, hey, this and this need to align better, and you start pairing those people or those key stakeholders together. It doesn't always have to be in one large group, but you start pairing them together with the groups that need support or need to understand. I think too, it's always good to, bother your sales reps with the little details that are going on in the company. Oftentimes people say, don't, just let them sell, like don't include them. But sometimes I think they need to know, the nuts and bolts of what happened behind a company.
That is a really cool approach. Yeah. Not going to name names, but there's sometimes it's like, well, just make it happen. It's just like just make it happen. And it is in a really nice way helpful for them to see all of the decisions that have to be made to make that button show up, in your point of sale system. Right. Yeah. And then if they can see that, they're like, oh, okay, so this wasn't just like a really easy thing. Like this is harder than I thought to do that one thing. Yeah. And
I think
so you're saying put the reps on there. Put the reps on there sometimes. Put a couple of key reps or key performers on there. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes or put your VP of sales in your dev meeting every once in a while, and then he'll be like, oh, there are a lot of moving parts that go behind this. Or put your VP, your regional managers on a thread with finance to say, hey, here's kind of what hoops we're jumping through right now and the constraints we're hitting, and everyone will get a little bit of like understanding if they just can hear. And everyone has problems, right? Sales isn't the only one that has problems. And so hearing sometimes those other problems, obviously not, you don't have to do it like super frequently, but every once in a while, it kind of opens their eyes and softens everyone.
Yeah. It's also like a trust thing, right? Because it's not you being the communication bottleneck, for all of these conversations. And did they really say that? And everything. It's just really the conversation. You are really talking to the head of engineering over here,
Yep.
Not whatever you decided to tell, you know what I mean? Like it's just the actual conversation with the real people. Yeah. That's cool. What do you think is changing fastest when it comes to sales ops for companies like, with a direct to home, movement or model? What do you think's changing?
I think technology, right? Everyone's getting better at building their technology stacks, which is great. And I think it's fun. But I think technology is changing. And then I think recruiting, like how we recruit, who we recruit, that has taken a big shift, I think, in the door-to-door world. It's no longer like the same typical model of like, we're really trying to change up, that recruiting process and where we get recruits and how we get recruits. So I think those are the two biggest things that are changing.
Let's go into recruiting a little bit. So do you think recruiting is, how do you think it's changing? I've got some things I've seen where there's bifurcation, there's separation of different channels of recruiting. Where you've got, let's say in the solar, there's setter closer model, and they're making the setters like ready to start giving utility bills like immediately, right? And you've got that recruiter going on, and then you've got, okay, we'll just do like closer model over here. We'll recruit dealers faster and get them on board. What's changing the fastest around recruiting, like in your mind?
I think what I see changing the most is that like there is no typical, you need this type of person that can either be a setter or a closer or a door knocker. It's like anyone can go knock doors. And I think there used to be this stereotypic that they had to be, young college kids, that those were the only people that we could recruit. And I think we're finding a shift where it's like, no, we can go recruit somebody that's, maybe a little bit older, later in career, or, I've seen people that have grandkids that are knocking. And so I love the shift. I think that it's been a good one. But really finding out like who they are, what is going to be their, like, what's going to make them successful, and putting them in the right role based off of, getting to know them, and not just having to plug and play and say, this person can only do this, so we're going to put them in that role. It's like really finding out, where they best fit in the org is super important, I think, as well.
Do you see this as kind of a psychographic recruiting, meaning like the recruiting is around like, well, what do you want out of it, versus like, this is the only way, this is the way, this is the only type of recruit we want, heavy, we want aggressive, amped up people to sell. But you're saying now, no, maybe you're coming in because you want to just improve your resume because you're young. Maybe you're coming in because you want to make a little part-time pay. And so you're trying to meet them where, is it more of meeting them where they're at to plug them in the right spot?
Yeah, for sure.
It's cool. What technologies are you excited about? What's something that you've seen that was like, whoa, this is cool. I'm looking forward to using more of this type of thing.
I think any AI, right? Any interaction that you can do via video, and you remove some human elements, right? Like a welcome call. If you're doing a welcome call with a customer, if you can, integrate that with a software that's AI, and you're not having to have a human take that phone call, it's a lot better experience for your sales reps, right? You don't have to call and talk to a human, and everyone does the welcome call differently. That kind of stuff really excites me because it streamlines the process. It makes it feel elevated for a customer, but still provides a solution for exactly what you need. So any of those softwares where they're removing kind of the human aspect of a call center are super fun for me right now. Anything to gamify.
Is that to just like kind of bring back make it so there's less friction for the rep to support the customer, so they can maybe focus a little bit more on more sales and maybe a little bit less support? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. For sure. Creating a streamlined, process to get the sell to the finish line is always, kind of awesome for sales reps. So if they can, make it feel elevated, and it kind of tells your company that you're a little bit more achieved, then that's always a win for sales reps. And so,
nice. So would that fall under sales enablement? Would you describe that as a sales enablement tool?
Sales enablement. Yep.
Yeah. Any other technologies? We can go move on, but I was just curious if you have any other technologies you are interested in.
I think any technologies around gamifying your sales reps is a win. And so, right, human nature is that we're competitive. Which is great. And so any of this, I want to challenge you head-to-head competition. Or team versus team competition. Like, hey, I'm going to challenge you that I'm going to outsell you on Saturday. I love softwares that do that, and building things to drive competition, healthy competition, obviously. But I think motivating sales reps is super important. Incentivizing and gamifying is super important to any sales org. And so putting any technologies towards that is super high on my list.
Cool. All right. What's the last question? What is the hardest thing about your role?
Oh, that's a great question. The hardest thing about my role is probably, oh man, that's a great question. I think the hardest thing for my role is that in any sales operations, you're going to span the longest hours and you're going to talk to the most people. So you're going to have your angry sales reps. You're going to have, finance is always bothered with you. Your chief revenue is always like pushing for more revenue. And so you're kind of, sometimes it can, in sales ops, you can feel like everyone's mad at you. But I kind of look at it instead of, and I have really thick skin, so it's taken a few years, 16 to be exact, I have to think of it as like, I'm the glue. They're not mad. They're just coming to you and venting. And so I think everyone complains about sales. And so you kind of have to play this Switzerland mode of like, your loyalty lies with sales, but you also have to keep everyone at corporate or in operations happy. And so I think that's the hardest thing of trying to play that Switzerland. Like, I hear you, but also sales brings us revenue. So we kind of do what they say. And there's that fine line of where you can push those bounds, and then you just kind of have to be a patient listener.
That is so good. It's kind of like if you never had anybody complain about like a product, like a software product, they never tell you anything about it. Do they really care? Because they only complain if they want to have it improved. So if
right.
Before you're married, we don't complain, right? We try to avoid the complaints. Once you're married, you're like, I'm committed to you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to complain to you because we're committed. So I want to make sure that we change this because I'm committed to you and I want to live with you, right? So it's kind of like that, right? Like if people are coming to you and telling you the challenges and the problems that they're having in their roles, and that kind of means they think of you as the person that can solve them, help me solve them. And if they're not coming to you, then you have more of a problem.
For sure. And I think, that negativity can be sometimes really hard in sales operations. Like, you're always getting the negative, you're always getting the bad, you're always getting the ugly, you're always getting the broken, or this isn't working. And so I think just trying to stay positive and, fix things here and there is sometimes hard. I feel like the world's against you.
It's almost like an availability bias, right? You only get to see the stuff that's broke. Like, is this broke?
Yeah. Right. Because if it's working great and it's a good experience, they're never calling to say, hey, that was amazing. They're just going on with their day and they're just glad that it's better. And so usually you're just getting the good. You're never getting the good. You're getting the bad and ugly. And sometimes that can be daunting.
Yeah. Back to I know I'm harping on this, back to this, like, demonstrating contribution. Maybe it's just for yourself. Maybe it's just writing down the wins and just reminding yourself of the wins. Because if you're knocking down a bunch of stuff all the time, I know I've done that. I feel like I'm just knocking down a bunch of bugs, and early on, just knocking down bugs in software. I'll just keep a list of this stuff, and then I can come back and look at it and say, at least, I'm not getting a lot of accolades, but at least I could look at these things and know that these were done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I always had like a whiteboard in my office, and I would always write, the things I was working on were obviously up there, but the things that we had accomplished that month or, that quarter, I always kept them up. So every time somebody would come in, I'd be like, yeah, there's still a lot wrong, but look at all of those things that we've tackled. We haven't completely sucked, good reminder is always good. So
that's good. Just keep reminding yourself of all of the progress, even,
Yeah.
That's really great.
Another thought I had is something that's been super successful for me in my career is just being really intentional. Like, I follow a same routine every day, get up at the same time. I do the same thing. I just putting a routine and structure to your day can really help grow you in your career. And so whatever that might look like for you, for me, it's, I get up, I have breakfast, And I text everybody that I know it's their birthday. So I'm really known
cool.
for birthday shout outs. And so whatever your routine is, get into it. And it'll help you in your career. Reading those books or those self-help books, like set some goals and then stick to that structure, because it will really help you, I think.
Ground back to the things you're going to do every day rather than getting swayed by the things that are coming at you all the time.
Yeah.
That's so good. Lacy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
really
you
appreciate,
for having me.
Really appreciate you being on, and I look forward to the next time we can talk.